Hey guys, what's up? It's Joe Rady from Rady's Rides. I am here at a very special location in Pinellas Park known as LHT Performance. And today is the day that we're going to take my 2023 FL5 Civic Type R and bring a little bit more sound and a little bit more performance. But before we get into what's happening here at LHT Performance, let's talk about what's going on here. It's no surprise that when people buy vehicles like the Civic Type R, they want to sometimes do some personalization. They sometimes want to make some changes. And when I bought the Civic Type R, it was specifically for me to do some changes and bring those results to you. Now, I'm getting ready. Finally, in my calendar, I have some free space where we're going to be doing our first track day. Where is it going to be? Historic Sebring, where they hold the 12 hours of Sebring race every year. Hashtag respect the bumps. That's going to be our first track day. So before we just jumped in, I wanted to do some track prep to the Type R here at LHT Performance, because that's one of the things that they do here. Replace the brake fluid. I want a fresh oil change. I want John at LHT Performance to go over all of the vehicle from start to finish. Nuts, bolts, everything in between to make sure that we are good to go. But I also want to show you this amazing process about taking the stock exhaust, which yes, performance is there, but it does have a restriction when it comes to sound, and it's very heavy because it's stainless steel. What we're going to do is John is going to hand assemble with George here at LHT Performance a custom titanium exhaust system. So let's go ahead, let's find out. If you have a Civic Type R, Acura Integra Type S, should you be getting a titanium exhaust, especially one here from LHT Performance? Let's go ahead, let's dive in and find out.
All right, guys, we are in my FL5 Type R, starting off with doing just a little bit of driving before we get the exhaust swapped out. One of the things you'll notice is that you hear sound, but a lot of it is simulated. There's not much coming out of the back of the car. It's one of those things where you hear more intake noise, but you're not getting sound. It's not like the Type S, the Integra Type S, where you're getting some more sound, some pops, some bangs, things like that. What I love about the system that John at LHT Performance is going to be building for us is, like I pointed out, having the ability to still keep the valve, the exhaust valve. I think that is very important, especially with the ECU and the different drive modes, because remember, when you're in comfort, that drive mode closes the exhaust flap. But I'm gonna go ahead and downshift into third, into second. You ready? On throttle, here we go. So, very, very quiet out of the back of the car. You're hearing a lot of engine noise, and like I said, that pumped in sound, and Honda's been using that simulated sound since 2019 with the SI. I'll never forget, it was in Las Vegas, and I drove the SI and I was like, wow, this definitely sounds quite a bit different than a 2018. And I remember at first the Honda PR people were like, oh, we don't think there was anything done with simulated sound, but it wound up turning out to be. My ears were not lying. They were not lying to me. It was definitely that pumped in sound. Now the good news is that if you use the custom mode, what that allows you to do is have everything set up exactly the way you want. So I like having the Plus R dash. Of course, I like having the Plus R driving characteristics, the quicker automatic rev match downshifting, the quicker steering, quicker throttle response. The two things that I don't want, especially at least on the road, is the Plus R's very stiff suspension, very, very rigid. Good, I think, for a pool table smooth environment, maybe like a European racetrack, because there's not a lot of super smooth tracks here in the United States. So I always have the suspension in sport in the custom settings. And then the sound. I don't want that Plus R extra pumped in sound. So I actually have the sound that's being pumped in through the speakers, and that gives it a little bit more to where you could hear the engine. Maybe you pick up a little bit more out of the exhaust, but not much. Now, I know a lot of you are probably saying, well, Joe, why don't you hook a GoPro up to the rear bumper? And I've thought about that plenty. The problem with doing that is that in itself is artificial. You are not sitting on the rear bumper of this car while you're driving. You are not outside the vehicle of this car while you're driving. That would be kind of weird. So I feel like when people do that, it sounds fantastic, no doubt about it. But let's be real, you're putting a microphone right at the tip of the exhaust. So what I want to do is I wanted to have the camera set up here to give you that open cabin experience of being in the car with the exhaust stock, way quiet. And then I'm going to do the same camera angle when we have that full titanium exhaust put on. And remember, that titanium exhaust system has a special valve that we're using on top of it. It's not like we're just swapping the center exhaust valve from the stock system. We're actually, excuse me, we're actually using a larger valve to keep that diameter of piping consistent. Unfortunately, we're driving a little bit, excuse me, in rush hour traffic, but we're getting on the highway, and this will give us a little bit better opportunity to see the sound. So I'm going to downshift in a second here. Are you ready? On throttle, here we go, up the hill and through the woods. So it does sound pretty darn good inside the cabin. It really, really does. The challenge is a lot of it's simulated, so it's fake. And I'm not getting anything like the Integra Type S has when it comes to the pops and the bangs. So that's another issue. At least from a acoustic perspective of driving, having that extra sound that's real coming from the back of the car. Now, I'm not gonna get any kind of pop and bang tune or anything like that. I think now you're just working the opposite way of making a car less efficient so that it dumps a bunch of fuel to make it pop and bang and everything. So we won't be doing a pop and bang tune. And if you watch John's video when he built the exhaust and had it on his Type R, you'll be surprised about how good the Type R drives with having the exhaust on, and how good that torque delivery is, horsepower, and of course air fuel mixture. But going down the road, this is the experience you get in a Type R if you're especially using it as a daily driver and have the stock exhaust on. All right, guys, one more time for good measure. Let me put in a second gear because first gear is kind of pointless. It's just gonna spin up the tires. Are you ready? On throttle, here we go. All right, so that gives you the flavor of what it's like with the stock exhaust system and what's happening on the interior. We're now gonna hop back into my Type R with the full titanium exhaust, custom built by John and George themselves from LHT Performance. Let's go ahead and get
All right, guys, now that you heard the FL5 Type R, my Type R with the stock exhaust still on, we have gone to the next big step, which is obviously having John here at LHT Performance remove the stock exhaust. And here it is laid out. What's surprising, I think, to a lot of people is that this is one whole piece. So if you are going to change your exhaust yourself, this is what has to be removed to make that happen. And it's all one solid piece. Now let's start at the beginning. That kind of makes sense. You could see how this is a manufactured on an assembly line kind of deal compared to what we're going to show you with John's titanium exhaust setup that he put together. So you have about a 2¼ inch diameter pipe. So we're talking about that smaller diameter. This little guy right here, this is not a coffee can. This is the first resonator. And what's interesting is that with the Accurate Integra Type S, this is what that vehicle does not have from the factory to give it that little raspier sound, to give you some of the pops and the bangs. So if you've ever wondered, well, how different is the Integra exhaust, the Type S, compared to the Type R, this is one of the main key components. But one of the things I like to point out is, like I said, you look at the welds. Wait until I show you the welds on the titanium exhaust that John is putting together. You're going to see what's called artwork. It's almost like I want to hang it on the wall because of how good it looks. But really, with the manufacturing process, we come to this guy here. This is not one of those Cheetos cheese ball containers. This is another resonator. So you could see right off the bat how restrictive that this system is. And you know, it's not like Honda doesn't know what they're doing. Let's get straight with that. I mean, for a car to produce 315 horsepower and the torque that it does and the way that it performs, this does a pretty good darn job of it. But what we're trying to do is get a little bit of that great sound. You could take off the exhaust and John will be, I don't know if he'd actually do this because I think that it kind of goes against what he wants to create. You could go somewhere and have somebody put a straight exhaust pipe on. It's going to be loud. Everybody's going to know you're coming, especially when you pull onto Cars and Coffee. They're all going to be lining up, and I don't think they're going to be giving you a thumbs up. They might be shaking their head like that. But when you look at what John is going to be putting together for the Type R, it's something about getting a good quality sound, and then you are going to get some other benefits. So if you watch the video that I have at the end of this one, LHT's video, first of all, you definitely want to check out their channel. What I love about watching LHT's YouTube channel is that it's super informative, but it's a lot of fun. And that's the key. Yes, we could sit here and give you numbers and stats and make it be like John could wear like a lab coat and have a pocket protector and everything else. No, that's not what they're about. They're about being serious, getting the job done, but also having a little fun. And that's what we like to do, obviously, here on Rady's Rides. You know that. So with this exhaust, you're looking at a little bit over 40 pounds of weight. Now, if you watch the different links that I'm going to leave in the description of when John was going through the process of building the exhaust and all that good stuff, and especially doing the dyno, when he puts it up on the dyno machine, what you're going to find is that it's not going to give you like 50 horsepower. Anybody who tells you you're going to get all this horsepower just by changing an exhaust is a liar. And the great news is that what the key when you're looking at the graphs on the dyno machine is how linear they are. Do you have major dips? Do you have major changes that's going to upset how the car operates, whether it's on the road, on your favorite twisty road, or on the racetrack? And then it's going to shave, like I said, about 10 pounds of weight. Because remember, it's not just about titanium, it's a larger diameter exhaust system. So that's another thing to think about. So as we're working towards the rear, this is where it gets very creative with what Honda did with this Type R, being an FL5. It is different than what you find on an FK8. Because remember, we have that valve system. Steven's going to show you in that center tip, that stock valve system, opening and closing. And what I love about what John is doing with the titanium exhaust is that he's having a valve there. And remember, what you're going to see when we show you is John makes a bracket, the whole shebang, so that you can mount that motor and have that operating in your different modes, which I think is a nice big plus. Now, when it comes to the actual mufflers, the mufflers that you'll see in a few moments are going to be straight through, pass-through exhaust. And it's all about cleaning up all of the exhaust flow. On this exhaust, whenever you're looking, it's not super smooth because they're talking about building them at a high rate. The process to build a titanium exhaust takes time and to get that perfect. And then, of course, when you get to the tail end of the business, obviously one of the things that not only John, not only Steven, but also myself wasn't really the biggest fan of is the different sizes. And nice that we're going to have the same size all the way across, and we're talking about double-walled construction that John is going to be putting together with the titanium exhaust. But why don't we go ahead? It's time to now get to work, well, for LHT Performance to get to work and get that titanium exhaust on my Type R. Let's see, before it goes on, what it looks like. And we're going to hear from John himself, the mastermind behind LHT Performance and all that they do. We're going to hear from him and go over the exhaust piece by piece. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, guys, special treat. Now, this is John. John, thanks for having us out here at LHT Performance. Normally this shop is a buzz, but we have this special access, and he's given us some special room in his shop to talk about the masterful work that him and George did with this FL5 titanium exhaust. So John, obviously you had that Boost Blue Type R.
Yes.
What was your goal with this system overall?
So the long-term goal was to have more capacity for power. I
Sure.
was thinking of building more power, which is why we went to the 3-inch. 3-inch, obviously, the bigger the diameter gets heavier.
Sure.
I wanted to save some weight, and of course, titanium is just an exotic-looking material.
Of course.
As well as weight-saving. I wanted to have more of the sound when the valve opened, because the car doesn't really make any sound at all. It's almost
Sure.
like I hate to say it, more of like a whooshing vacuum cleaner sound. It doesn't have that engine sound.
No, no.
And I wanted that, but I wanted the boost activated valve, the factory, you know, the exhaust.
Of course, of course. And I think, like I mentioned to a lot of you guys at the start of the video, I think sound is very important to you because you've been in this Honda game for a very long time.
Yeah.
What have you worked on Honda wise?
I started really with the CRX. That was my dream car in 1987. With
I remember those.
CRX.
Yeah.
I still have one now, but that was my dream car.
That's awesome.
I did engine swaps and superchargers and such. Then we did Integras, Preludes. I eventually started working on NSXs, including the new NSX.
Yes.
But I think sound is one of the most engaging parts of the driving experience.
Sure.
It's the thing that's directly related to what you're doing in the car.
You're 100%
So
correct.
it has to sound right.
Yeah, you're right. And obviously exhaust is a place for somebody to be able to get that experience, like to create that experience. And I think one of the things that I also want to point out to our viewers is when it comes to craftsmanship, not all exhausts are created equal.
No.
Not every brand is created equal. And what makes this exhaust very special is that this is a full custom built. You didn't have a map of somebody else's system that you copied or whatever. Like, this is something that he put together here at LHT Performance. So at the start here, what on the stock exhaust, which we did look at the stock exhaust, but what was that key thing that we got rid of at the front end of the business?
Well, of course, the Civic has 2 resonators. The Type S having 1, which is where it's probably get a little bit more sound. There's usually a resonator here.
Sure.
This bolts right onto your factory pipe,
which
would be 2 3/4 inch, but we made the flange so it will fit and
Nice.
suit up to that.
Nice.
We lost the first resonator and went right to the second resonator.
Sure.
Again, try and get a little bit more sound out of it. But again, 3-inch all the way through. Factory hangers, we added an extra.
This is important. This is important.
If you're tuning, it's always nice to put that second O2 bung on there so you have feedback from a second.
Right there, yes.
Yeah. More data, the better.
Definitely, definitely. So as we walk back from this resonator, we're still talking 3-inch.
It's still 3-inch, and the idea is to keep it tucked up in the car.
Sure.
Again, whenever we build something custom, we have the freedom to make it fit the car the way it is.
Exactly.
Make sure it fits as tight as we can, but without rubbing.
We don't want to burn anything. We don't want to melt anything, or God forbid it go a different direction.
Exactly. You also don't want it dragging the ground if particular car is really low.
Really low.
Some cars are lower than others. Plus, you put 4 people in there.
Sure.
You hit a speed bump. All the things that you don't think.
I think
of.
people don't. They forget about these things.
Exactly. I mean, 25 plus years, all the things that I used to think I knew.
Sure.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And
that's what, and that's one of the things I think that you do very well is that you keep your mind open, even though you have been in the business for a very long time.
Yeah.
You're not just like, oh well, this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to do it from here on
Yeah.
out. It's like you keep your mind open to try some different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that this is the area where a lot of.
This is the important part. Yeah.
So what do we have? So we have our 3-inch exhaust coming back, and then what did you have to do here? What was your thought process here?
This here, we changed it twice. Of course, I did all the testing on my car.
Sure.
My idea is this is a straight through 3-inch all the way through.
Wow.
It has the electric valve, which we made it connect to the factory motor. So it has the ability to be in different positions.
Sure.
It's not just a straight open and closed. It's in variable stages. So the idea is it's a full 3-inch under boost. When you're light throttle, this closes, forces the gas and the sound back here and forces it through these mufflers right here. Now, this is something that when I put pictures of, a lot of people were a little bit freaked out. They're like, well, this is going to kill the airflow.
Yeah.
And I used to think that too, 25 plus years of playing with exhaust. I was always about thinking it has to be straight. You can't make it
Yeah,
turn.
get it out. Yeah,
It doesn't
just get
wanna
it
make-
straight out. Yeah.
And doing this and seeing other manufacturers do it, it doesn't hurt it at all until you get to the upper horsepower range, which by that point,
Everything's
it's
coming
all
out the
straight out
center
there.
anyways.
Yeah, anything over about 150 horsepower, gas is straight bypassing this. But this was to try and get rid of some of that tone.
And definitely click on the links at the end of the video and the links that I have in the description, because there's a little bit of a series and thought process and the build process of this very exhaust that John did here at LHT Performance. So make sure if you want to actually see him working and doing because this is an art. I don't know if you're aware of this. Welding seems to be an art that's sort of dying. There's not a lot of people learning it at a younger age.
There isn't. A lot of it is
It's
robotic
scary.
now.
It's scary.
A lot of manufacturing is robotic.
And that just because a robot does it doesn't mean it's perfect.
No, exactly. It's only as good as the setup, and if nothing else changes, the weld is fine. But we see robotic exhausts that fail because the weld might not be exactly where
That's
it wants
crazy.
to be, or it's been set up slightly wrong.
That's crazy. So definitely click on those links to see this build and process. Now, as we come with the actual mufflers here, so what did you do internally? Because I could see where you welded. You had a cut. You had a weld.
Yes, so this here, we're limited of this size. We wanted the valve to be in the same place
Sure.
as Honda. We wanted the tips. I'll talk about the tips
Yes.
in a minute, but the tips wanted to be in the same location.
Sure.
But we wanted the biggest muffler we could fit within this package. Basically, the muffler, the bigger the muffler, the more sound
Sure.
suppression. Also, these were originally a 2.5-inch muffler, which we have two 2.5-inch tubes, which again, the bigger the diameter, the more deep tone, the more noise.
Of course.
This company that we buy our material from, Tycon, didn't offer a 2-inch exhaust. So we ended up using these cans, cutting the cans open, putting a 2-inch core in there, putting all the packing back
Yep.
in, and then making these dual twos.
Wow.
So again, dual twos is more airflow than
Of
you
course.
would ever need.
Of course. Of course. And I think another thing that's good to tell everybody, part of the reason behind you doing what you did was to try to not have that crazy drone.
It's the drone and it's that sound that the Civic has low down. And again, I don't mean to beat on the car.
Of
'cause
course,
it's a
yeah.
fantastic
Of
car.
course.
It's just that sound between idle and 3,000 RPMs. It just sounds. It doesn't sound like I want to hear it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It doesn't sound like a performance
Yeah.
type car. You want that. You want a certain sound that
Yeah.
you're familiar with.
So it doesn't have the like I said, the OG Honda sound. That sound.
Sure.
So I wanted to suppress that sound, but when the valve opens, that sound sounded pretty good, especially with a 3-inch.
Nice.
It sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to get all the sound when I needed it.
That's awesome. And then tell us your thought process with the actual exhaust tips, because you see, Spoon builds an exhaust. They have just 2 tips.
Yeah.
Some people, it's like these gigantic ones, these small ones. What was your thought process with going on here?
Tips again, I didn't like the mismatched size. I know it's the FK8 had
Sure.
it reversed.
Sure, I know.
Like,
Yeah.
and
But the
again,
Type
I
S,
get
but
it.
the Integra Type S has the same
It
size.
was all the same size.
Yeah.
And we were in the vision of this before we even saw the Type S.
Sure.
Like, we had this exhaust canopline. In fact, we built the tips before I even got the car.
Yeah.
Well, the idea is the internal diameter of the tip. Think of this like a megaphone.
Okay.
And I learned this from one of the sound engineers I met at SEMA. He said the bigger the diameter acts like a megaphone. Remember the old megaphones?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Football games and stuff.
So yeah, the more consistent small diameter you can keep it, the more you can keep that tone down. But we wanted it to look like a substantial tip. We didn't want just
Yeah, a little
raw,
dinky,
little tip coming
yeah.
out. And again, we made this double wall, which
Nice.
it's quite complicated how to make this. We have to use tapers to make the outside look larger than the inside.
I saw that in the video. I saw that,
and again,
yeah.
It's that type of thing that it's more work, but the end result, the finish, looks right. Looks like an exhaust tip.
Well, and I know I seem to be, singing John's praise a lot, which I am, because it is deserved, and I think that's something that here at LHT Performance, there are people that I know from Canada that send their cars down to you because you pay attention to detail. It's not about being a 5-minute oil change shop.
No, not at all.
It's about the fine details. Even to the fact, like I've noticed, like with the S2000, you have that kit to make sure that the badge isn't crooked.
Yeah, and it's just that, I hate to say OCD because it gets such a negative vibe, but it's being picky.
Of course.
If you care about it, the longer you're doing it, the more picky you get, the more you want to improve on what you did.
Exactly.
If you really care, you treat the customer's car like it's your own.
He truly does. I know a lot of people proclaim that, but he puts his money where his mouth is.
It's your signature. The last thing you touch, that's the best thing you've done. Essentially, it's kind of like you're only as good as the last job.
Exactly.
You got to put your passion behind it.
Well, thank you, John, for I know you are extremely busy. Trust me, and I can't wait for John to get this on the Type R. So we're gonna get out of his hair. He's gonna get this on and do a couple other things with the brake fluid flush for the track day and the oil change and everything. So I can't wait for you to hear this exhaust sound. But thank you, John. I'll let you get to work.
I appreciate it.
We'll see you soon.
All right, guys, we're back in my Type R now. You heard the exterior of the different sound with the titanium exhaust. Now we're inside, and of course I wanted to go to one of my favorite twisted roads to really give you an idea of what the sound is like. Sitting here, you definitely can hear it's louder on the inside, but let's go ahead and go on throttle together through some twisty bits and see how she sounds. Are you ready? On throttle, here we go. Nice. Definitely getting a sound difference. I hope it's getting picked up by the GoPro, but I have the camera mounted in the same exact place. I have it in custom mode, or what they call individual mode, because I like to have everything, like I said at the beginning of this when I did the first drive, I like to have everything in full plus R mode. Suspension is in sport, and I like to have the synthetic pumped in sound as low as I can make it. Right away, I could hear the difference. As soon as I fired it up, I heard the difference. I still have the valve active. And I wanted to make that comparison so that it makes sense. We had the valve active, opening and closing as it does on the stock exhaust, and I'm very happy that John decided to build the exhaust with a valve just to keep that part of the engineering there. But what I would like to eventually do is pull the fuse for that valve and see what kind of difference that we have. Now, like I said, when he dyno tuned his car, his Type R, his Boost Blue Type R, he got an additional 10, 12 horsepower and a little bit more torque. But the key was all of the dyno graphs were nice and linear and consistent, which is what you want. You don't want to make a change and then get a major dip involved in that torque curve, especially because it's going to make the car drive like garbage. But what the goal was not to make the car just louder. I wanted a cleaner sound. And John and I were on the same brain wavelength with that whole concept. The sound, I really feel that we hit the nail on the head. Being louder, not boomy, which I'll show you once we get up to speed what it'll be like on, I don't want to say highway speeds because I'm not getting on a highway, but on a highway style drive, what that sound is going to be like. But I just like the way it's a very crisp, clean sound. And I think that's what I really, really wanted out of this. I'm gonna downshift to third. You get some pops, you get some bangs. Are you ready? On throttle, here we go. I love this car. I love this road too. Woo-wee. I'm telling you, the way that this car drives, if you've never driven one, and the sound out of the exhaust is phenomenal. If you've never driven one, it's gonna surprise the hell out of you. A front wheel drive car with around 315 horsepower at the crank. It just drives so well. And I can't wait to take it to Sebring in a couple weeks. That'll be my first time on track at Sebring since 2001, if you could believe that. The last time I was in a race car. Now I'll be doing it in my Type R, and I have a feeling I'm gonna have a lot of fun, and I can't wait to share it with you. That's one of the best parts about this whole deal, is being able to share it with you. But, you know, I knew going with John and LHT that the exhaust was gonna be built right, and we saw the outside of it before it was bolted on the car. It looks phenomenal from all angles. And like I said, I'll be doing some more stuff with this car, so don't worry about that. It just looks great. It fits the back bumper area very well, and no rattles. You're using all of the existing hangers and everything else. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it into reverse here. We're just gonna run this up and down and then head on home. I gotta go have lunch. But yeah, the sound it's exactly what I wanted. Are you ready? On throttle, here we go. And I know there was some talk in the comments section not too long ago on that GR86 review that I did. They're like, Joe, you have all these high horsepower cars. Why are you telling us to get a low horsepower car? Here's one of the examples of how I don't always drive a high horsepower car that I actually own. This thing it's just so sublime. It really is. I love this part. Decreasing radius, look at this. Ooh, little pop out of the back. And then the D cell is one of my favorite because that's when you're really getting a nice, that tone comes down and it gets nice and beefy. And that was another thing. Like, I didn't want it to sound like there was a coffee can attached to the back of the car. But definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section on what we did so far. Had the oil change, got rid of that braking oil, had the oil change, got the brake flush. That's the most important thing when you're going to do a track day. Do not go on stock brake fluid. Your fluid's going to overheat, the pedal's going to get mushy, and it's going to go to the floor, and that's not going to be a good day. I will also be putting a review together on how to prepare for a track day. So for those of you interested, some of the details, not just only about the car, but also about what do you need to bring with you. And I got a whole bunch of stuff that's important to bring. And what I'll do is I'll make sure to have those things and show them to you so that you have an idea of what you're gonna need when you go to your track day, because you want to be prepared. You want the car to be prepared, you want to be prepared physically and mentally, but you also want to make sure you have the proper tools, things with you, so that if anything pops up, you're going to be prepared. Because a lot of times, it's not called an on purpose, it's called an accident. And accidents do happen. A clamp can loosen up, a bolt loosens up. You want to be able to take care of those things and be able to rely on the things that you have. But I hope that you've enjoyed this little journey, especially. Let me know if you like the whole interviewing thing with that little discussion I had with John and I. Let me know if you're digging this kind of review. I would love to bring more stuff like this to you, but we're going to get back to LHT Performance and wrap this one up. So I'll see you in a nanosecond.
All right, guys, it's been an exciting day here at LHT Performance. Definitely want to thank John, George, and the rest of the team for getting us in, because like I said, his schedule is very booked, but also giving us that individual attention and attention to detail to his work. Let me know what you think. Are you digging what John has done with this titanium exhaust and the way that it sounds, both exterior and on the interior? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. We're going to be bringing you more from LHT Performance as we continue this journey of making changes to the Type R. But if you're new to the channel and you're on your way out, hit that subscribe button. I promise you it's worthwhile coming back for more. If you are a subscriber, thank you for being part of the Radies Rides family. We got to thank Stephen Flood Photography. He's been up since 6:30 a.m. making sure that he was fully stretched out for this review. Thank you, Stephen, for all your hard work. And just like always, guys, I'll see you on the next ride.